Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned, if you're here, you are here for part 2 of our Your Money, Your Goals Train the Trainer event. So to talk a little bit about the learning community and what we're doing with these webinar series, the purpose of the learning community is to analyze community action outcomes and identify effective, promising, and innovative practice models that alleviate the causes and conditions of poverty. So the short way of saying that is really to help you all build your capacity to fight poverty. And this is of critical importance because as community action, anti-poverty work is at the very heart of what we do in all of our various communities across the country. And the biggest thing that ties us together is the promise of community action. That's the thing that brings us all into our offices every day in our different capacities and helps us to focus on the communities and families that we're serving every day. So if you'd like to read along with me, community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So one of the various PNTA offerings that we bring to you all through the learning community is the National Webinar Series. And these really focus on promising anti-poverty approaches that we want to broadcast through the entire CSBG network. So specifically, you all are here for our Your Money, Your Goals, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing this. So the partnership is very pleased to be serving as an umbrella organization for 26 community action agencies, many of whom I'm seeing in the chat are on the line today. But these 26 agencies have pledged to be a part of the 2017 cohort of Your Money, Your Goals through CFPB. And in this work, we are serving to provide them training and technical assistance related to their training and facilitation efforts in this work. So very exciting, and we look forward to reporting on their progress throughout this cohort, which will be going through October of this year. So before I turn things over to Denise, I did just want to prompt you guys, if you're joining us last time, you took the survey before, but if you're new, a big part of the Your Money, Your Goals training is to track metrics based on what you knew before today's training and how much you feel like your knowledge has increased after the event. So if you all can take just a quick minute to fill out the survey, you can click on the link right here from your screen. I'll also send it out through the chat in just a moment. But if you can do that, fill that out, that would be great. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over into the very capable hands of our presenter, once again, Denise DeVan, who is a senior consultant with CFPB on this work. So Denise, you are on.
I am to be with each of you today like we were last week. And to those of you who are new to today, and those of you who were with us last week, I think we had about 190 or so last week. I know that Hyacinth has opened this to the entire network, including the CSBG directors, and I saw the list of who was here last week, and we were delighted at the breadth and the length and the width of who you are throughout the country. I'm not new to community action at all. I used to work with the Community Action Network in Minnesota, and then way back in 1998, I was a national trainer for the National Association of Community Action Agencies and worked a lot with the national office. I've had the privilege of training for the national network in about 15 states, and so I know the CAP system really well, and I'm just delighted to be with you today. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a real resource for each of you. Last time we went over what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is, and I want you to know that on the website there is so much information for you in English and in Spanish, and so many free materials for you that you can just order, and I'll have a slide at the end that shows you, where to do that. And I'm leaving the slide up because some of you are still going to need to click in here, but by way of background, again, I want to thank Hyacinth for her leadership and the leadership of National CAP in bringing you all together today. Last week, we went over kind of an overview of the toolkit, which is thousands have been trained in throughout the country. And you should know that in the toolkit, if you haven't really seen it, you should really order it for yourself and for your staff, especially while they're free right now, underscore. And the reason I mention that is that it's about 350 pages long. And it is an absolute up-to-the-minute desk guide, go-to guide on almost every money topic you will cover in your direct work with families in your communities and individuals, of course, too. There are lots of other materials available to you that are also free. One in particular is called Behind on Bills, and it's very pictorial. And it's especially good for people who just are not readers or who have reading challenges and really are just more visual. And then there are other guides available to you. There's a great new guide on reentry for people coming out of prison. And there's also a guide for Native Americans. And there's soon to be posted a focus on persons with disabilities. But then there's lots of information for new Americans, people who are Spanish-only speakers. And as I'll show you in the end, there's a way to submit a complaint if you see any kind of financial abuse going on, and those complaints can be accepted in 184 different languages. And because of the complaints that have come in and because some of the financial actors out there have not followed the rules or followed the laws, several $1 billion, I think we're counting somewhere between 15 and 20 billion right now, has been returned to ordinary consumers like you and I. And these are people who didn't follow the law or didn't follow the rules and who have been caught or turned in. So today I'm going to now quickly turn to the slides. Last time we went over goal setting, what it means to have financial goals and how do they have to be really specific. You know, somebody maybe have a financial goal of reducing a credit card by $1,000 has to really break that down by every paycheck or every month or every week. We went over a lot on savings. And Michelle, I'll answer your question here in a second. You'll get all these guides at www.consumerfinance.gov/your-money-your-goals. That is a great resource for you. And the other one is www.consumerfinance.gov. And it is unbelievable, all the stuff that's there and available and free to you. So last time when we went over savings as though we were building the bottom of a house, where savings is kind of a foundational piece. And we talked about savings for emergencies, real emergencies, especially savings under $500. And we're not at all promoting this 3 to 6 month notion of savings. The research shows that $500 or less will really stave off a lot of emergencies, and it must be replenished, of course. So we're going to talk about a cash flow method today, and that cash flow method is going to have a line item for emergency savings, but we also talked last time about savings for what we call irregular, if I can spell irregular bills. And these are the kinds of bills that come up not every month. These are the bills that throw off a monthly budget. It's things like car insurance that's due twice a year, or life insurance, or it's things like an oil change that's got to be done a few times a year, or things like school supplies that will come up every August, and September comes every year, and the kids go back to school every year. There can also be some irregular bills like food costs, especially when kids are home and there's no free and reduced price lunch available. There are a lot of irregular bills that come up that if we don't plan for them and set something aside and build that in, we don't have the money when we need it, and it throws off the monthly budget. So we talked about savings for emergencies, savings for irregular bills, and the other thing we talked about is savings for short-term goals, really short-term. Maybe a short-term goal is having enough cash in the months that are tougher, like holiday months or summer months. And maybe a short-term goal is buying a car, because you know we have to do that every few years. Maybe a short-term goal might be going to school or buying a home, or might be having a baby. Or it might be a health care issue that we know is coming around the corner, and our deductibles and our co-pays and all that just isn't going to cover it all. Maybe a short-term goal could be a prom, or it could be a wedding. It could be happy things in life, or it might be a really sad thing like a funeral. So we want to think about savings for emergencies. We want to think about savings for irregular bills. We want to think about savings for short-term goals. And then we want to think about savings for long-term goals, like retirement. And, you know, the goals for each of us are very different. And it depends what our culture and our values and our, differences are. You know, some families get together very often. We talked about that. And some families don't, because they're all over the country or all over the world. Some families have real priorities around coming-of-age celebrations or dances like Native Americans do, and, you know, participatory things in the community. Others don't, you know. So there's lots of seasons, and we're right now in Ramadan, and that's a holy month for people who are practicing their Islamic faith, and they're fasting right now. So there's not a lot going on in terms of food right now, but when it's all done, there's a celebration. So all the differences that there are. So then the other thing we started to do is we started to talk about, we went from the basement floor, because we're building a house, savings, and then we started quickly talking about, and this disclaimer just means you and I can share this information, and it's not illegal, and it's all educational information, and don't worry about it. Then we started talking about tracking what comes in. So this is kind of the first floor of a house. We want to track everything that comes in. And I think I asked you last time, you know, what is it that makes a monthly budget work? What is it, do you guys think? Use the chat function. Help me out. What is it that makes a monthly budget work? Those of you who have a monthly budget, effort, of course, having visual expenses, realistic income. Keep going, guys. What else? Knowing it and sticking to it. Okay, keep going. Keep going. What kind of support do you need to make a monthly budget work? There's the balance of inflow and outflow. Yep. You guys are all smart for sure. Having a steady income, putting time and effort into creating the budget. Yep. So let me offer a couple of things that we are seeing throughout the country. Yep, there's household commitment, there's responsible spending, and everybody in the household's on board with the plan, and the pay is consistent. There's consistent income, and we know where the money's going. And what will throw off the monthly budget? What will throw off the monthly budget? What will throw off a monthly budget? Probably the opposite. Spending habits, emergencies. What else will throw off? Emotional spending, good. Unexpected bill, good. A big emergency, getting sick. Irregular bills, yes. The answer is yes. Stress spending, yes. That's where emotion is tied to spending. Try to help us feel better in the moment, and it might work for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden there's debt, and then it doesn't feel so good. Being laid off, hours cut. So one of the things that we learn in the financial coaching field is if we have an accountable partner, it makes it really easy. So if we have a spouse or someone we live with that's accountable and helps us to stay accountable for what we've agreed to, that really helps. And when you say being able to look at it, it's like looking at it every week, look at it every week, or sometimes every day, every week, for sure, every month. But it's really looking at it. It's really seeing, did we stick to our plan or not? And I want to ask you, in your own experience, do you think a monthly budget works? Does it work for most people? Does a monthly budget work for most people? Do you find people that you work with, it works for most people? Does it work? Does it work for most people? So Fanny says yes, Michelle says yes. And I want to offer to you, sometimes it works for me. That's good, Anna. So let me ask you this. It works if it's realistic about the income and the expenses that we're dedicated to stick to it. So let me ask you this. In the people that you work with, and even in your own family, do you think people stick to the monthly budget? Do you think the majority stick? No. Tanisha says no. Danielle says no. No. Very few stay with a budget. Okay. So this has been my experience as well, and I think it's the experience in the field throughout the country. So I want to ask you for a moment to just take the monthly budget practice and set it aside. Take the monthly budget practice and set it aside. Just set it aside. You can take it back. I just want you to set it aside for a minute because I want to show you a method, if you haven't already seen this or know it, that the CFPB is really promoting and that we're experiencing throughout the country as a real winner. And I want to show it to you in a chart form. I want to show it to you in a calendar form. And in the behind on bills that you can order, it's in a picture form. So here's how it starts. So we started with savings in the basement. Now we're going to go to the fourth floor, which is tracking and managing income. And you and I talked last week about what is income. Regular income is income we can count on. Irregular income may be a regular job, but we can't count on the same amount of money. Somebody who works in a fast food place or works in a restaurant doesn't have the same amount coming in. Somebody who has a regular job and a regular income, they will have the same amount coming in, the same growth, and probably the same net. And then we get to seasonal income, and of course those are things like carpentry and swathing for farmers and ricing for Native Americans, or working at Christmas time or Hanukkah time, or working at the fair. It's money that comes in, seasonal. One-time occurrence is that like a tax benefit, like your earned income tax credit. And then we talked a lot about benefits, you know, all the benefits, housing benefits, food benefits, child care benefits, you know, all that stuff, all the public benefits. We have to track all that too. So we're not just going to track cash. We're going to track everything. We also want to know about wage garnishments. These are the things that come out because of child support not paid or taxes not paid or a school loan not paid. And it'll happen. It'll happen to your clients. It might have happened to you. It'll happen to family members. I had a family member, an extended family member who lives out of state and was shocked that wages were garnished. And it was because of a child support issue he didn't really realize. So the bottom line is we have to track all kinds of income. We have to track benefits, and we've got to track, and we have to know if there are wage garnishments. And I showed this to you last time. I don't really like this. I think it's hard to read, but it's a way of doing this with a chart. So the first step is on the top is to really track what comes in. So you can see here there's week 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there should be a week 5 because some of us get paid every other week. So we'll get paid 26 times a year, and we'll get paid on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th week of June, for example, and that'll happen in December. So you want to be able to track what comes in on the top, and on the left-hand side, you want to track exactly what comes in. So if you're working with somebody who's got a job, what is their net? Is it regular or irregular or seasonal? If they have a second job, what is their net? When does it come in? We're in the month of June. I think we're in the 3rd week of June. Yeah, so we're in the 3rd week of June. So we would put in our paycheck from last Friday, let's say, in the 3rd week of June. But then the 4th week, there'd be no money, and then the 5th week, there would be. So I would take total income, put week 5, put total on the end, and make sure you could cover the 2 months where there are paychecks for those that get paid every other week. But you'll be working with clients who get paid every week. They get paid every Friday, or they may be day laborers, and they get paid when they work. So it's very irregular. It may be one time, it may be seasonal. So the idea here is that we track what comes in and when it comes in. and we have everything on the left-hand side. If we are on SNAP and TANF and a job, we put down the sources of what the net is or what's received, what's actual, not what we hope, not what we dream, not what we plan. We put down what's real. So that's the first step. And if there's a lot of people use this system, if they have no cash at all, they just have public benefits. So in the real tracker, in the toolkit, it's like 3 pages long, and it's got all the disability incomes. I believe it has child support, and it's got room for the earned income tax credit. There should be a line for the state tax credits, you know, which are cash that come in. So the idea here on the income and resources is not like a strict accountant that counts income only as earned income. This is a different way of tracking. It counts income and resources, any kind of resource. Even a loan from a friend is counted, anything that comes in. And you can reassure your clients that the government will never see this. People who are looking at qualifying your clients for public benefits, they're not going to see this. This is just for you and your clients to work with, right? Now, I'll show this to you in a calendar form in a minute. The other thing the toolkit has got is it helps people understand how to get paid. Some will get paid in cash. The drag about that, of course, is if they have no record. They can get a paycheck. The drag about that is if they don't bank, they have to pay to get their paycheck cashed. They can get it direct deposit. That's fine, and maybe they don't bank after that, and they just take their money out. They can get a payroll card. That's fine, but if they lose it, you're supposed to be able to get it replenished, and everybody needs to talk to their HR to make sure that if they get paid in a payroll card because they don't, you know, they don't bank and their company only does direct deposit, then what happens when that payroll card gets lost? If they get a public benefit, they get an EBT card. So if they're on SNAP, you and I know they're on they get an EBT or Social Security or any of that stuff. So they have to know how their money comes in. And this is a tool or a worksheet to help people understand the benefits and the risks. And we went over that. And ways to receive income, we went over that. Ways to increase income, we affectionately say we want people to really do it legally, of course. And this goes on for 3 pages of all the ideas of what people can do to make a little extra money. And I want you to use a chat function now. What do your clients do to bring in a little extra cash or a few more resources? What do they do now? What do they do now to bring in a little extra cash or to bring in more resources, cash or resources? What do? They give plasma. Oh, I feel so sad when I hear that. They babysit, they take in renters, they gamble, they do crafts, they take in energy assistance, they do hair if they have that ability. They collect cans, they recycle aluminum, they have yard sales, they sell their food stamps, yeah, not legal, they do. They have yard sales, yep. They transport other people, yes. I know a lot of people that are starting their Lyft if they've got a car, you know, Uber, yep, they do that too. So these are all the ways in which they can increase income. So that's that. So the first layer of the floor is to track what comes in. Now the second layer of the floor, of the house, I should say, we started with savings in the basement. We started with the first floor, which is tracking what comes in. Thank you, Michelle. They sell items online or they have garage sales or they babysit. Now we're going to track what goes out. And again, I want you to look at how bills are done and how expenses are done. So this is what we look at here. So spending is what we use for a variety of needs, wants, and obligations. So we're going to do an exercise here. Needs are the things we must have. Wants are the things we could survive without. Think camping, think rock climbing, think, you know, going into the desert for a while. So wants are the things we could survive without, and obligations are the things we must pay because we owe somebody. Maybe child support, we signed a loan, could be a school loan. So needs, wants, and obligations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a name, and I want you to tell me if you think for you it's a need, a want, or an obligation, okay, for you. It's going to be a cell phone with a data plan. Is that a need? Is it a want or is it an obligation? So I see some needs, I see some wants, I see some wants, I see some wants, I see some wants. An obligation if there's a contract, wants, wants. There's 139 of us, needs. Needs due to having kids, okay, need. Okay, a cell phone with a data plan. My child lives in another state, and it's how she shares her life with me. So I think that's a need, Anna. Okay, so that's a cell phone with a data plan. Let me give you another one. Paper towels. Is that a need, a want, or an obligation? It's a want, 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 want. Nobody thinks it's an obligation? Want, if an alternative is available, want. Need, want, or an obligation. Everybody thinks it's a want. Huh, okay, good, good, good. Now let me give you another one. Are you ready? Let me give you this one, pet food. Is pet food a need, a want, or an obligation? It's a want, it's a need, it's an obligation. It's a need, it's an obligation. It's a need, it's an obligation. It's an obligation, obligation, obligation. It's a need if you have pets. It's a need if you have pets. Need, okay? All right? Let me give you another one. Now don't hit me. I know you can't. Baby formula. Is baby formula a need, a want, or an obligation? It's a need, a want, a need, a need, a want. An obligation, a need, a need, a need, a need, a need. It's a want unless you're unable to breastfeed. If the mother cannot breastfeed, it depends. It's a need and an obligation. It's a need. Could be all three. It's a need. All right, let me give you another one. I want you to pretend now that you are a parent of one of your clients. I want you to pretend now you're a parent of one of your clients. Jordan shoes. Is Jordan's shoes a need, a want, or an obligation? It's a want, 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 want. Want, huh, want, need. Want, want, all right, want, all right. So I see a lot of wants, but I did see some needs. I didn't see any obligations, all right. Let me ask you another one. Let's pretend you are one of your clients, and let's pretend that client is a female. Is a manicure and a pedicure a need, a want, or an obligation? It's a want, it's a want, it's a want, it's a want, it's a want. It's a want. Oh, I see all these wants. Need, depending upon your job, depends on your profession. If you can do it yourself, why would you want to pay for it? It could be a need. It provides socialization, okay? It's a want. All right, so you guys are doing great. We've got 139 of us on the line. All right, so I want you to bear with me for a second, okay? So the paying bills and the other expenses always starts with needs, wants, and obligations. So the cell phone with a data plan, for some of you who said it was a want, others of you said it was a need, let me offer to you a woman I met in the state of Washington. She stood underneath the poster that said it's an obligation. Why? Because she had has two disabled children that have to have carers with them all the time so that she can work, and she had to be accessible in any way, shape, or form to those disabled children. So for you and I, it might be a want because maybe the cell phone, separate from the data plan, but for her, it was an absolute need and an obligation. For paper towels, for those of you that said it was a want, I want you to pretend you were with me in St. Paul, in the Workforce Center in St. Paul, and about a 32-year-old Asian Pacific Islander or Hmong man working in the workforce system said for him it was an absolute obligation. Why? Because he would never have a guest come for dinner and ever give them cloth that had already been used. It was an honor to have the guest in their home. It was a cultural difference, and a paper towel was how they could honor each other, not the towel that was already washed. The Jordan shoes, I was in North Carolina, and one of the staff stood underneath need and another one stood under obligation. And they said, in our area, if those kids don't have Jordan shoes, they get beat up by the gangs. That the Jordan shoes are a sign that they are in and they won't get forced to do what's not their values, which is selling drugs and getting beaten up. And they felt it was a matter of safety to have those Jordan shoes. Okay, I offer these opposites to what you've said because what is the message? What is the message? What is the message? What is the message? A, we shouldn't judge. B, what else is the message? It's based on the individual. It's based on the household. It's based on their circumstances. It's based on their needs, their wants, and their obligations. And their needs, oh, and the pedicure and manicure, oh my God, there's a caseworker in the state of Washington who is so upset that one of the clients had a pedicure and a manicure, and yet, I think I mentioned to you last time, when they went underneath and they tried to find out what was really going on, that mother was going to a parent-teacher conference, and she wanted to be like every other middle-class mom. She didn't want anybody to know she was poor. Therefore, her pedicure and her manicure were needs over food because of the embarrassment of not fitting in, and she wanted her kids to be just like those other kids, not seen as poor kids. So this is a big eye-opener for all of us to really figure out what our needs are, what our wants are, and what our obligations are for us, and then to try to step in the shoes of the people that we're working with and to walk in their shoes and to try to find out what is their need, what is their want, and what are their obligations. And I think if you and I do that, we're going to find that a lot is tied to safety, a lot is tied to fitting in, a lot is tied to wanting to be middle class, and a lot is tied into this is the way it's always been. It's always been. From one generation to the next, right or wrong, the system hasn't been broken to reprioritize needs, wants, and obligations. So I want to offer this to you, and it's a great exercise to do in your trainings. So this spending tracker, you've seen these a million times, I'm sure, but this is a way to really track in pencil or pen kind of where does our money go, and what are the, I don't know Dr. Donna Beagle's work. Thank you, Belinda, for offering this. This is a very poverty-informed perspective if you know Dr. Donna Beagle's work. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't know that. So we want to find out where the money goes. We don't really know where the money goes unless we kind of track it, and not everybody's going to track it. There's a lot of apps people use to track where their money goes. Every dime they spend, they track where it goes. But this is one tool to do that. But one of the things that we want to really help people do as an exercise is ask them what spending cannot be cut, what spending could be eliminated, and what spending could be reduced. And once we know that, once we start to think about our needs, our wants, and our obligations, then what happens is that we start to build our budgets around that. Now, this is a way a lot of people will use a bill calendar. They'll just put a monthly calendar in the kitchen, and they'll put when the bills are due, and if they're going to send a check in, and a lot of people don't have checks anymore, But if they do send a check in, they'll put it in color. It's due today, let's say in red, but in a different color, yellow. I send it 7 days earlier, so it gets there on time and I don't get dinged. Or if I'm going to do online bill pay, I'll get it set up for 2 days ahead of time so it gets there on time and I don't get dinged. A lot of people will color code this. Then the next thing that there is in the toolkit in this particular area is a way to understand how do you pay bills if you don't bank. And this shows the pros and cons of all the ways in which bills are paid. Remember, the CFPB is agnostic. They don't say open up a bank account. They don't say don't go to a check casher. They just say find what works for you and stick with it. And our job is to help empower, in the best sense of the word, what works for you, what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages. There's a whole exercise in here on how to cut expenses. A lot of people love doing it as part of a small group. And again, when you get these slides, all these exercises are underneath the slide. So when you print it off in the long note form, you print the slide, only instead of printing slide, you print it in notes, you'll have all the directions. And this exercise helps people go through how to cut spending. This is another way in which this goes on for 4 pages, all the ideas of what people can do to cut spending. Reducing your cable bill, going to a different provider for the internet if it's possible. Some of the phones have got free phones that'll go along with if somebody's on a public benefit. Cell phone plans. There's all kinds of ideas for how to cut expenses. I think I mentioned to you last time there was an amazing banker in the state of Washington, and she simply unplugged everything in the walls for 1 month except the hot water heater and the refrigerator. And you guys are caps. You know how important this is. Just unplug everything, and her utility bills went from $153 1 month to $26 the next, just by unplugging everything and only using what she needs at the time, and then unplugging it again. There's a whole thing in here on the consequences of skipping bills. This is a great exercise. It's hard to do this in a webinar format, but you put everybody in groups, and you say, what are the consequences of paying your rent late in group 1, and what are the consequences of missing multiple rent payments? People think through the consequences. What about a car payment being late or missing multiple car payments? What about the electric bill and missing multiple electric bills? What about missing a payday loan or missing a credit card payment? And you can see in the 4th group here, in the beginning, you're going to lose your apartment, and you'll lose your car. It'll get repossessed, and your electric bill, your utility will get shut off. But when it comes to a payday loan, a credit card payment, it'll ding your credit report, but you're not going to lose your basic needs. And that's kind of the message of this exercise. And this is the one we do all the time where we have someone read. The CFPB says, how do you prioritize your bills? When people don't have enough cash to pay all their bills every month on time, what do you do? And they say, protect your income, protect your shelter, protect your obligations, pay them, and protect your assets. So if you could read with me for a second, protect your income. If you need a car to get to work, stay current on your car payment and your insurance. Protect your shelter. Whether you rent or you have a mortgage, the cost of losing your home is really big. So make sure your taxes and your condo fees and your mobile home lot payments are paid. You want to maintain your utilities because without them, reconnecting is really expensive. Pay your obligations. This is the stuff that sends us to jail. Child support, income taxes, student loans. They're never, ever, ever forgotten. Ever, ever. They're never forgotten. Protecting our assets, insurance, the bankruptcy rate on medical insurance is still one of the highest in the country. And so keeping our insurances is really important. So here's what it doesn't say. When the debt collector calls about the credit card, do you pay that? Do you pay that first? The CFPB is mute on that. They just say, if you have to pay every other month or you pay a little bit on these, call your creditors. Try to work something out and make sure you're protecting your income, your shelter, your obligations, your assets, and your health. If you don't have those, we're all in a very fast skid spiral down. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Okay, so now we have so we went to the basement on our house, and we talked about how important savings is. You're going to see how this all comes together. We went to the first floor, we tracked everything that comes in. We went to the second floor, we tracked everything that goes out. Now we're going to put a big ribbon around the whole house, and we're going to build the house, because now we're putting it all together in getting through the month. Notice this doesn't say a monthly budget. It says getting through the month, and we're going to do it by the week. We're not going to do it by the month. I want you to set the monthly budget aside. And just bear with me while we go through the week. So a cash flow budget is very different than a regular budget. A cash flow budget is actual. It's not a dream. It's not a plan until life happens, until the unexpected happens, or the September comes and the school supplies are due, or the car insurance payment comes, or, the prom is there, right? Or the car accident comes, right? Monthly budgets will only work when they work, and when they don't work, they don't work. So this is the way it goes. It's broken down every week. So when you see this chart, which a lot of people hate charts, but we're going to learn it with a chart, then we're going to learn it with a calendar, and then I'm going to talk to you, okay? So in the first week, when this starts, this family had $37 left. At the end of the week, they had $122. So when the week started, they had 37. At the end of the week, they had 122. I want you to look at the buckets on top. Week 1, 2, 3, 4, you can't see 3 and 4 because it's a slide, but 5. On the left-hand side, you've got all the sources that come in. So you have income from a job, income from SNAP, and income or resources from a public housing voucher. And if you are awake and alive and well, you're going to say, well, why in the world would you put SNAP and a public housing voucher in here? And the answer is because it's a resource that pays for basic needs, because everybody needs to know what the real costs are, because someday people are not going to be on public assistance. They're going to have a job that pays enough, and they're going to do whatever it takes to pay their bills on time and have a good life. That's what we're wanting for everybody. But the only way to get there, or one of the ways to get there, is to see what the real costs are. And so we start the week with $37. We end the week with $122. So on the left-hand side, we have all sources that come in from any kind of public benefit, a loan, anything. And on the bottom, I want you to tell me, did this family start with needs, wants, or obligations? How do you think the spending side is going here? Is it needs, is it wants, or is it obligations? What do you think? Use the chat function. Is it needs, is it wants, or is it obligations? What do you think? It starts with needs. It starts with needs. So savings, this emergency savings, is a need for this family. Housing, utilities, groceries, eating out could be considered a want, but notice they're not putting any money there. Transportation. So they start with their needs, right? They could have started with their obligations. You're going to see an example in a minute how it's done that way. So they start the week with 37, and they end the week with 122. Let's go back to the beginning. So 37 plus 305 plus 280 plus 650 comes to $1,272. Then you subtract what goes out. You subtract the 1149, and they're in the positive, 122. That's really good. They carry the positive to the top of the second week. Then they add what comes in from the job. So you can see in this job, they must have regular work but irregular pay, because they got paid $305 the first week and $290 the second, right? They might have a regular job, but they get irregular pay. Maybe they get paid only by the hour when they work. Maybe it's a fast food job when they work, or it's working in a restaurant. I don't know what kind of a job this is, but they get paid. They get paid, but not regular. There's not regular income that they can count on. That's very important to know, because if it's irregular income, the irregular income has to carry over all the time. So that's really important for somebody to know. So then you can see in the second week, they've got income from a job, but it's not as much. But when you add the 122 plus 290, it comes to 413. Now, they've got $20 for savings, $95 for utilities. Look at the first week in utilities, $59.95. Again, something else is going on in utilities here. Maybe they paid a cell phone bill along with electric in the second week. I don't know. Groceries, look at the first week, $180, second week is $80. Look at the transportation, $240 and $60. So they must have had a car insurance payment or some kind of a maintenance. But you know, if it's maintenance, it's probably an irregular bill. And there should be savings for emergencies, savings for irregular bills, savings for short-term goals, and then needs. Now, you're going to say, my families don't even have enough. And I'll say, I know they don't have enough. But if you bring in the earned income tax credit and start to seed emergency savings and irregular bills and carry it through, there will be enough. Maybe not every month, but there will be more. Look at the housing, $650. So that includes, that's the rent right there. And then transportation isn't the same, but you add it all up and subtract it from what comes in, they're still in the black. Now, this is our exercise. Raphael is a single dad. Raphael has 2 children. Raphael is late with his rent and his other bills. Why? Because he doesn't have the money when he needs it. That's the main thing we're going to try to solve. He went over a tracking way of trying to track his spending, and he got some help with it, with a coach, and he's got a cash flow method now. So he doesn't do a monthly budget anymore. He does a cash flow budget, and this is what it looks like. And I think this is hard to read, so just bear with me. Look at the buckets on the top. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and there really should be a week 5. Let's say we're in the month of June. On the left-hand side, these are all his resources. Cash from a job, cash from a part-time job, and then SNAP, the card, not cash. All right? So look at when his cash from his jobs come in. In this particular month, it comes in, his paycheck, his net, comes in the second and the fourth week. He gets paid a paycheck, $990. It's the same. So he's got a regular job with regular income that he can count on. That's good. But he's also got a second job, like a lot of people do. And that second job is a regular job, and it's got regular income. Good for him. And he gets paid every week, not every other week. He gets paid every week. So here's a guy who doesn't get paid once a month. He doesn't get paid every week on his regular job. He gets paid every week on his part-time job. And then look at what happens to SNAP. It comes for him in the first week. Now look at what happens on the bottom. Does he start his budget with his needs, his wants, or his obligations? What do you think? Does he start with his needs, with his wants, or with his obligations? He starts with his obligations. He starts with debt. He's got contractual relationships with these creditors. He starts with his obligations. That's okay. Main thing is he doesn't start with his wants. So he starts with his obligations. He starts with his credit card payment, which is due in the third week. He has a personal loan to somebody. That's in the fourth week. He has a student loan. That's in the second week. Savings, look at, he's got nothing going in the savings area, which is going to bite him later on. Housing, $845, it does include his utilities. Okay, that's good. And then he's got different kind of utilities. He's got television, $63 in the second week. He's got internet, $22 in the third week. He's got a phone and a cell service in the third week. He's got household supplies and expenses. That's in the second week. And look at his groceries. $200 the first week, $80 the second week, $100 the third week, $80 the fourth week. Now, we don't know if he's got special needs or why his, I can just tell you right now, he spends more in his food area than he brings in his SNAP. You can see that, right? $200, $300, $380, $460, and he brings in $412. That's not good or bad, right or wrong. He just spends more money on food. Then he's got eating out, $25 a week, a car payment in the third week. He's got fuel, which is the same, $60 each week. He's got auto insurance, $175. Looks to me like he's paying by the month and not a couple times a year. He's got child care, $70 every week. And then he's got this miscellaneous. And I don't really like miscellaneous, but he's got miscellaneous. And miscellaneous, we don't know what it is. Now look at what happens the first week. He started with $257, but he ends the week in the negative $361. We don't really like this because what happens in the second week, he starts in the negative $361. That means he has to take that away from anything that comes in. $849 minus $361, I'm sorry, $990 and $220. When you add that together and take away the $361, all he's got left is $849. And then he spends the student loan all the way down, but he's in the positive the second week, $65. He carries that positive $65 over in the third week, but he doesn't get a paycheck, only the part-time job. So he's only got $285 to work with, and then he's got all his bills due, credit card payment and his internet service, and on it goes, right? And then all of a sudden he's in the negative $463 that week. He carries over the $463, and then he adds up his income from his two jobs, $746, and then he pays his personal loan, and then he buys groceries and his fuel cost and his eating out, and he's in the positive, $361. So look at the bottom line. Week 1 is in the negative, week 2 is in the positive, week 3 is in the negative, week 4 is in the positive. Go back to week 1 in the negative. That negative $361 carries over because that's what he's got. This is actual. And then it comes to the positive $65 at the bottom, and it carries over. And then it comes to the negative $463 at the bottom, and it carries over. And then it comes to the positive $361. This is not a good scene. So the question is, when does he run out of money? Well, we already know. He runs out in the first and the third week. That happens to be when he doesn't have his paycheck, right? So what could he do to better match the timing of his income and his spending or his expenses? And I want you to use the chat function. What could he do to better match the timing of what comes in and what goes out? So I want you to take a real look at this. What could he do to better match the timing? He could move some due dates, Elizabeth says. He could move payment due dates, Catherine says. He could ask for different due dates. He could use a bill calendar. He could change the loan payment due dates. Okay? He could ask for extensions. He could change the due dates. He could try to start at the end of the month to pay some of the bills for the next month that are due in the first week. He could cut back on eating on the lean weeks. Okay? All right? So the first thing you guys said is he can move his bills around. So let's look at that. Let's look at his housing. So if he moved his housing, if he talked to the landlord, would the landlord let him pay twice a month, like during the weeks he gets his big paychecks? Maybe. Maybe if the landlord knew that the landlord wouldn't lose him as a renter because he's a good renter, maybe. Let's look at his utilities, his television, his internet, his phone. What could he do with that? He could bundle. He could bundle all that, and he could move the due date. And he's on public benefits, so in some states he's going to get free phone service. He could cut back on his service. Okay? One of you said he could cut back on eating out. Yes, he could eat out once a week, once a month instead of 3 times a month. He could try to get free food instead of paying for food, so the free food would go along with SNAP by using the community resources to make up the difference. He could do that. What about his student loan? Those of you who are really smart about student loans, what do you think about his student loan? Look at what he makes. He could refinance it and go to income-based repayment, absolutely. His student loan is really high, so he needs somebody smart to help him go to income-based repayment, and he could reduce that. What about his car payment? What about his car payment? He could refinance a student loan and take it out for more years. He could refinance if possible. He might be able to refinance that, the car payment. Could the credit card payments be consolidated too? Maybe, yes, maybe. For the lowest interest rate of all of them, yes. And his auto insurance is probably too high unless he's had a lot of accidents and he's got a lot of speeding tickets. That car insurance is high. All right, he could shop around for car insurance. So there's a lot of things he could do to better match so he's in the black every week. Now, what's missing on the income side? He's a single dad, and what else would he qualify for? He could qualify for the earned income tax credit. He should get child support. And if his wife has died, he will probably get the Social Security death benefit, right? So that's missing on the income side. What else do you think he could qualify for in your state? He could get a child care subsidy, yes. He could get a housing subsidy, yes, yes. There's a lot of things he could do on the income side to better match the timing of what comes in. He could use public transportation, maybe. We don't know, maybe. But if he could, he could. That would cut down the transportation costs for sure. All right? So you guys are doing a great job. So this is cash flow, because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to, here, let me show you this a second. We're trying to increase what comes in. We're trying to decrease what goes out to better match the timing in an actual basis and to really be in charge and on top. Now, this is the cash flow budget that's in this toolkit, and this is the one I suggest you use. It's about 3 pages long, and you would use this for your clients, and not everybody's the same. But to those clients who just have one job, cross everything else out. To the clients you have that are on TANF and nothing else, cross everything else out. To the clients who have a job, a second job, and self-employment, keep that, cross everything else out. And then this particular model starts with obligations. It starts with credit card payments and payday loans and personal loans, and then it goes into needs, and then it goes into wants. But notice it's got 5 weeks. So what you do is you help people plot in what is their actual monies and actual resources coming in the right week of that month. And you'd have like 12 of these. 12, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And not every month is going to be the same. Summer months will be different than Christmas and Hanukkah. They're not all going to be the same. The earned income tax credit will come in January, and it can be divvied out throughout the year. You'll see in this whole long thing, which I can't show you, is there's savings for emergencies, savings for irregular bills, savings for education, savings for retirement, savings. You just cross out and just go savings for emergencies, for irregular bills, IRREGULR bills, and savings for short-term goals. Even if it's $1, get it in there. So it sets up the way to do this actual, not the monthly, actual, okay? Now, people who hate charts will like using a calendar. This is just a monthly calendar. A lot of free monthly calendars get sent to people's homes. And all you do is you take a line right down the middle from left to right. You see Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so you show the week. And you put a line down the middle all the way through, and on top is the income, and on the bottom are the bills and the spending. So on the top, this particular family gets SNAP on the 17th of the month, $280, and then there's a paycheck that comes in on Saturday the 22nd, $305. When you add the 280 and the 305, you get to 585. Stop. These calendars have got ketchup on it, it's got mustard, it's got peanut butter, and it's got whatever people's hands are doing when they're cooking, and it's messy, and it's got a pencil taped to it, and it's crossed out, and it's color-coded, right? So maybe income is green, or savings is green, and bills are red. I don't know, but it's color-coded. Now, on the bottom, look at what happens on the same day. SNAP comes in at 280. What happens there? Food is bought, 180. I'm sorry, 280 is on the top, 180 is on the bottom. The phone bill gets paid on the 17th. Then you go down to Thursday, the 20th, the gas. There's gas put in the car. And then you get to the 22nd, there's a car payment due, paid. And when you add all that up, it's $450. You take the $450 from the $585 and you're still in the black. That's what we want. So the calendar, a lot of middle-class people just use calendars for their household stuff. No big deal, right? Whatever works. So that's what we're going for, all right? Now, there's another tool in this area that helps people do exactly what you said. Negotiate due dates. Split your monthly payments into smaller payments. Avoid large sum, I can't talk. Avoid large lump sums or periodic payments by making monthly payments. So there's a downside to that. Maybe there's some interest charged. I don't know. But lots of times a monthly payment won't have interest charged. So, there's a lot of ways to do this. This whole thing goes on for 3 pages. All the different ideas of what people can do to improve their cash flow. So now I want to ask you this before we get into debt. I want to know honestly what you think about this. What do you think about a cash flow budget different than a monthly budget? And be honest, because maybe you're going to go back to the monthly budget and say, I still want to stick to the monthly budget. I want all my clients to stick with the monthly budget. I don't want to go to this weekly cash thing. Laura says, I love it. It's a good strategy, but complicated. I think it can be valuable for some folks. I like the monthly budget, Teresa says. It appears easier to track spending and income. Cash flow might be better for some of my clients. It's a great strategy. I like it, Karen says. So some of you want to stick to the monthly budget. You stick to it, whatever works. Some of you might want to transfer and just use a calendar. Do that. And I just wish I could show you. It's called Behind on Bills. And it's on the website, and it does the same thing, only it's visual. And you could get one of those for every one of your clients. It does the same thing, but it's just very visual. All right, so that's that. So that's cash flow. So we built the house. We started with savings. We tracked what came in. We tracked what goes out. And then we put the whole thing together into a cash flow. Now, this is the right moment for us just to take about a 5-minute break. And I've got exactly 1:02. We're going to start exactly at 1:07. That gives you 5 minutes to stand up, stretch. Please don't leave. Please don't cut out. It'll be hard to get back in. Let's just, each of us take a 5-minute break. Then we're going to get into credit, debt, banking, how to do your trainings, and then we're ready to rock. Okay? Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, I think we're ready to start. We're going to start with debt here. And I want to ask you guys, how many of you know the difference between the snowball and the higher interest method of reducing debt? Does anybody, are you familiar with that? I do. Alana says, I don't. Okay, I don't. Alana, I'm going to need your help. I've never heard of it. Oh, you're going to love this. All right, so debt. Let's just think about debt for a minute. For some people, they can handle debt. They can handle a lot of debt. Other people can't handle debt at all. It throws them into a panic attack. And some people will know intuitively when they have too much debt, or they'll know when they, when they don't. Some people just pile it on, and some people can't have even just a little bit of debt. So let's think about debt, because there's an emotional side to debt, and there's just sort of the basics, the hard and true facts. So debt. So debt is something, you and I know what debt is. Debt is money that we owe, but the main thing is that it's a liability and it obligates future income. So pretend you've got a dollar bill right in front of you. Whatever debt you and I owe, we might as well cut off that piece of the dollar bill, because it's not really a resource anymore. It's not income anymore. It's not worth what it is, because we have debt against it. I like to kind of visualize it in that way. It obligates. So if I've got debt, take a dollar bill, just whatever debt I've got, I just knock that off, because it obligates future incomes. And there's debt that helps us get ahead. So think about this, debt where I can get ahead, and then there's debt that keeps us behind. So some debt will help us get ahead, and some debt will keep us behind. And I think I just want to offer that to you as a framework. So you and I know that debt is very different than credit. If you and I are credit worthy, we can borrow and create more debt, but credit is really the ability to borrow money. And they go together. So if I am credit worthy, I can borrow and go into debt. And if I have too much debt, it will affect my credit worthiness. It's kind of a cycle, right? But it's not the same. Debt is the result of using credit. So that seems like, easy, right? So if I were to say this is a great exercise to do, a loan from a family member or friend, is that a good debt or is that a bad debt? What do you think? The loan from a family member or friend, bad, bad, bad. Teresa says bad, 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 bad debt, bad debt, bad debt. It could be either bad debt, bad debt. Could be either bad debt. Depends. I personally think it's bad. All loans are bad. Depends. Okay. Not ideal, okay? What can happen to the relationships with family members or friends? They can fall apart, or could it be conflict? So it can be a good debt for some because there's no interest rate, right? There's no interest that goes along with it. But it's a bad debt because it's not reported to the credit bureau to build credit, right? There's good and bad to it, right? All right, so let's go to another one. I want to ask you this: a car loan, is that a good debt or a bad debt? Family members might charge interest, yep, and it'll break down the relationship if they fail to repay. A car loan, it depends. Okay, so you're saying for some it can be a good debt, for others it can be a bad debt. So if people get into these car loan situations, well, it's good if it's paid on time, okay, but it could be a bad debt if a loan is taken out and the car doesn't end up being worth that, and then they're under, right? Or a car is depreciating, right? It doesn't really build any, appreciation. It's a depreciating asset. Student loan, is that a good debt or bad debt? And you're going to say, it depends. How much you've taken out and can you pay it back? Some bad debt, good debt, okay, bad debt, mostly good. How about a payday loan? Is that a good debt or a bad debt? Depends, bad, 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 bad. Awful debt, bad debt, bad, bad, bad. Okay, I see that. A mortgage, Is a mortgage a good debt or a bad debt? What do you think? Good if less than, that went by fast. Sorry, I couldn't see it. Better than most, okay? It's good if it's cheaper than renting. Good if it's affordable. Good, okay. Good, it's an asset, all right? Car title loan, pawn shop loan. So this is a great thing because then the next thing I want to ask is how much debt is too much debt? Now, in the toolbook, there's more information. You'll want to use this because a lot of your clients will get into these rent-to-own arrangements, furniture, refrigerators, rent-to-own, and generally, when you lease like this, it's much more expensive. So just help your clients know this. Co-signers, a lot of clients don't understand that when they co-sign a loan, they're liable for it. I was supporting a young man who had graduated from college. He was about 24, and we were just, he was afraid to pull his credit report, to be honest with you. And I sat with him, and I've told this story a lot, but it blew me away. This was a young guy, very good degree, very, very bright. And when he pulled his credit report, he found out that there was a credit card that had $35,000 on it in his name, and he didn't know what it was. And when we went and really explored it, he realized that his stepfather had taken out a credit card with his name on it so that he'd have something in college in case of an emergency. Only the stepfather used it and put $35,000 on it, and this became his debt. It's on his credit report. He didn't even have a credit card, but his name was on it, and he co-signed it, and he didn't have a clue that he'd be liable for anything that went on it. And the moral of the story is he finally had this very courageous conversation with his stepfather. He did look, and we found out that it was being paid off on time. There were no late payments, but $35,000 on a credit card is a lot of money. So he went and talked to his stepfather, and they cut it up, and he transferred the debt onto something that just had the stepfather's name on it, and he got out of it. Thank God the stepfather was good and kind and was willing to work with him, but he would have never known it. So he co-signed this, only it went the other way. The intention was good to help him in college in case of an emergency, but he's now liable for $35,000, and that took a while to get off, right? So you want to help people understand that co-signing, they're liable for all of it. Medical debt is still a big, big issue. We really encourage everybody to get their costs up front. A lot of people aren't going to know what the costs are because they have all the codes and they don't know what they are. Well, they need to find out. It's a new day. And so all the different charges, the anesthetist that charges on a 1099, as a 1099 contractor, and the hospital that charges, and the doctor that charges, and all the things that come. The idea here is to avoid medical debt and get all the costs up front, get a payment plan, get a discount, look at charity care. All this is in the toolkit, okay? We've already gone over payday loans. Debt settlement can be good or bad. And there's a great discussion in here about debt settlement. To combine debt is a good thing, but there's always cost to it, and the cost may be higher than just paying off the debt by itself. That's got to get really weighed and figured, and there's no free lunch ever. So what are the costs? Is it worth it? Is it cheaper to consolidate the debt? And you guys know better, and a good debt and credit counselor can help with that. Now, here's the thing about all these worksheets go together. So the first thing to do is to track the debt. What debt do I have? What debt do I have? A lot of people don't know what their debts are. So this tool or this worksheet, people write down, okay, I've got a car payment to this credit union. It's this amount, this is the interest rate, this is what I borrowed, this is how many months I've paid, and this is how many months I have yet to pay. I've got a mortgage, same thing. I've got a student loan, same thing. I have credit card number 1, same thing. I've got credit card number 2, same thing. So the debt worksheet has everybody painfully writing down what all their debt is, and you want to encourage people to be kind to themselves because this is a hard thing to do. A lot of people don't want to ever do this alone. They might need an advocate to sit with them. We just offer that to you because this is a hard thing to do. So then the question is, how much debt is too much debt? Now, those of you in housing, You know this one. You know what the debt-to-income ratio is. But those of you not in housing, you might not. So I'm going to ask you to do this right now. I want you to get out your calculator on your phone or use the calculator on your computer, and I want you to just add the monthly payments you have for your monthly debts. And by debts, I mean your mortgage, and go ahead and count the full PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, your car payment, your student loan, your credit card payments, each one, etc. Okay? We want the real debt payments, not your expenses. And you don't have to tell us, okay? Thank you, Lori, for doing that. But if that's what it is every month, then that's important for you to know. But don't, you don't have to write it in here. Just go ahead and figure it out for yourself what your debt payments are. Then the second thing you want to figure out is what is your gross income in the month. This is before anything is taken out. Get a number there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your debt and you're going to divide it by your gross. You're going to take your debt and you're going to divide it by your gross. Now, we're just doing minimum debt payments. Minimum debt payments. So if a credit card is $25 a month, do that. If a credit card is $35 a month, do that. If your student loan is $185, do that. If your car loan is $270, do that. If your mortgage is $1,760, your PITI, do that. Add your debt and then divide it by your gross. So if you get paid twice a month, add it together. If you get paid once a month, every other week, add the two together. And you're going to come up with a point, let's say a 2.5 or a 0.50 or a 0.59 or something. You're going to come up with a 0.40, whatever it is, you're going to come up with a point something. Okay? Once you do that, just hold on to it because I'm not going to ask you to share that. And then here is a guideline. So this is a national guideline. Consider a debt to income of 0.15 or 0.20 or less, or 20% or less, or 20 cents of the dollar. So take the dollar, and you can imagine if it's in quarters, that's 25%. 20% would be a little less than a quarter. So if you're a renter, it's ideal that your debt is less than 20%, so that you've got wiggle room for everything else. If you're a homeowner, it's ideal that it's 0.28 or 28% or 28 cents out of every dollar. So you take a dollar, a quarter is 25%, 28% is a little bit more than a quarter. That's if you're a homeowner. If you add all your debt together, it's ideal that it's a 0.36 or 36% or 36 cents of every dollar. So look at a dollar, 25%, 25 cents of a dollar is a quarter, and then 36 cents is not half, it's a little over a third. So that third is gone. Now, these are guidelines, national guidelines. So here's a family that's got a debt-to-income ratio of a 0.50 or 50% or 50 cents. Just take that dollar and cut it in half. That dollar, half of it is obligated to debt, and then 50 cents for everything else. So you can show this slide and have a discussion about it. So here's an activity I want to do with you, and this is a very common thing. Let's say this is one of your clients. Shauna has just graduated with her associate's degree in nursing. She's landed a full-time job of $17.50 an hour. She works full-time, 160 hours a month. So I want one of you to take $17.50 and multiply it by 160 hours. What do you come up with? 1750 times 160. All right, 2,800. There you go. 2,800. All right? So you take 1750 and you multiply it by 160 hours, and I think it comes up to $2,800 a month. would be her monthly take, no matter how she's paid. Once a week, every other week, you know, she's got $2,800, okay? Now, this is her debt. Add up her debt, 205 plus 90 plus 55 plus 625. What do you come up with? 975. Now, follow the formula. Take 975, and you've already got it. Thank you, Anik. She's a 0.40. In other words, when you look at her guideline here, she is above. She's already above, right? I think she's already above her debt-to-income ratio. But the question is, she needs to buy a car. And that car she needs because there's no public transportation to the hospital. So if she gets the car, she's really going to be really at 40%, a 0.40. And what we're looking at here is if she needs the car, what debt does she need to get rid of so that she can be at a 0.36, let's say? She needs to get rid of her credit card debt. Exactly. Thank you, Alana. If she gets rid of her credit card debt, and if she buys her car and has that loan payment, then she's within a reasonable debt-to-income ratio so that she has money for everything else. And that's what we're going for, right? So now, if she's got too much debt, which she does, all right, she's going to combine her credit card payments and have one payment. Yep, she could do that. Yep. But still, her amount, she has to reduce the amount of credit card payments if she can, so that her debt-to-income ratio is reasonable. Now, because of the housing market all over the country, these numbers are not accurate. They're guidelines. And, of course, gross is different than net. If you divide your debt by your net, it's even stricter, right? And you guys know that when you help people buy homes, the banks allow people to have more debt to income because they want to do those mortgages, but that doesn't mean they should, right? So they can get her an income-driven repayment plan for student loans if she isn't already on one. Good job. Thank you for that. Very, very few people point that out, Gabriel. Very few people point that out. Congratulations. So now the question is, she's got too much debt, she needs to reduce it. So these are two different methods of reducing the debt. And I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to use the chat function to do that. Let's say that she's got to get rid of this credit card. So one of the credit cards is that she owes $750, and it is at 22% interest rate. And the other one, she owes $200, and it is at 20% interest rate. I want to change this one to 29% interest rate, okay? And this is at 22% interest rate, okay? So here's how it goes. The highest interest rate method will have her paying off the credit card at 29%. Why? Because it compounds so fast. So you take the minimum monthly payment, and let's say on that payment, the minimum monthly payment is $35 a month, right? So you take $35 a month and you pay as much off as you can, but you pay the 29% card off first. Then you take the same $35 a month and you add it to the minimum payment for the other credit card that's $25 a month, and you're doubling up the payments. So you have $35 plus $25, and you're knocking off the 29% first. That's the highest interest rate method. And why would people want to use that? Because they're not accruing all this interest, and it's so hard to pay these darn credit cards off if you only do monthly payments. The other way is you knock off the lowest amount owed first. So in this sense, you would knock off first the $200. Your lowest amount first, you knock that one off. You knock off the credit card with $200 first because it's an emotional win. If I can knock that one off and take the same minimum payment, I can apply that to the one with the highest interest rate, and I can just keep knocking them off. And there isn't a right or wrong for these methods, the highest interest rate method or the snowball method, or a lot of cap agencies use Power Pay. It's a software. It's an online that the Department of Extension uses out of University of Utah. And it's a Power Pay, and it shows people how to pay this stuff off faster. So higher interest rate method, lower interest rate method. The chat function isn't the best way to do this, but I don't know how else to do it. So does everybody understand? And what do you think? So the question is, what is your debt? How much is your debt to income ratio? If it's too much, what do you pay off first and how do you pay it off? And these are a couple different ways. I see Z and I don't know what that means. Do you understand? And does it make sense? And would you use it? Would you use these methods? Yeah, would you use these methods? Yeah, of course you would. And people love these methods. I would, and we teach these methods. All right, Laura, what am I talking to? We're preaching to the choir here, all right? Repaying student loans is a big deal for a lot of your clients. Thank you, Eileen. Federal student loans are different than private student loans. You and I know that, but these are all the options now for paying them back. Standard, income-based repayment, pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, graduated payment, extended payment. In the olden days, you just paid off your student loans. Today, there are options. And the CFPB has got a fabulous website that shows people what their options are, how to pay these things back, when they get different offers, how to compare them. I've used it. It's really good. They've also got one for buying a house in their consumer area. When debt collectors call, we want to make sure that our clients really owe the debt. Lots of times, as you know, the debt is passed on and sold, and when the debt collector calls, you know, you can't really tell, is this my debt or not? And so there are new rules now for the debt collector. The debt collector can no longer harass, can no longer threaten, can no longer do any of that stuff. And the onus is on the debt collector to prove that the debt belongs to your client. And so there are letters to verify the debt, send it in, and, you know, to make sure if the courts have intervened here, you know, the client needs to respond to the courts and not, you know, go under the blankets or anything like that. But there's all kinds of letters in here. So these are the rights. Repeated phone calls, illegal. Obscene language, illegal. Threats or violence, illegal. Publishing lists, illegal. Calling you and not telling you who they are, illegal. Using any false or deceptive practices, illegal. If any of this is going on, then you want to report them to the CFPB, and swift action will be taken. So that's debt. Credit, you and I know, the credit is our financial resume, and employers are looking at it, landlords are looking at it, insurance agents are looking at it, credit card companies, utility companies, cell phone companies, you know, and I want you just to imagine with me, again, we did this last time, I want to do it again. Let's say your credit score is high. You know, it's 700, 725, 750, 760. Your interest rates on anything will be low. But if your credit score is low, 500, 550, 600, 650, 680, your interest rates are going to be high. So it's think of a seesaw. If the credit score is high, the seesaw goes up, the interest rates are low. If the credit score is low, the seesaw goes low, the interest rates go high. I like to think of it in that way. So we want to help people understand the connection between interest rates and their credit scores. And there's a great exercise in here that you could help your staff understand how to read a credit report. And actually, they just go through and they answer questions. Every credit report has got this bucket of information. It's got demographic information, public record information, collection, credit information, right? Inquiries. The negative information stays on for 7 years. A bankruptcy might stay on for 10. A civil suit or a judgment will usually be 7 years. And there's no length of time that positive information will stay on the credit report. So this is the exercise you could do. You open up the toolkit, and it's got this man's credit information. And you ask people to be in pairs and to answer questions. Who does it belong to? Where does he live? Where does he work? How long has he been here? Does he have any public records? Is he late on his accounts? Are any of his accounts in good standing? What are the balances? Is he in collection? What do his inquiries tell you? And what opinion do you have of this person's history? And the answer is his history is pretty average. And so it goes into who the credit reporting agencies are, and the free annualcreditreport.com, avoid all ads, and get it. Get all 3 credit reports, either PDF'd or sent, and then look at it. So the idea here is to get it, and then look at it, and then fix it. And that's what the first tool is. I want to go to the first tool here. So here is the credit report checklist. Is the name, the Social Security, the address, marital status, is all that right? And if it's not, then we have letters that can be written and sent into the credit bureau companies to fix the report. So I want to go back to something here for a second. The FICO score is what the CFPB uses, and we like to just go conceptual, look at the green and blue-green. We like to say that if you add those together, that's 65% of the credit score. So if people pay their bills on time and they borrow less than they're ever allowed to borrow, especially at 30%. So if they're allowed to borrow $100 and they borrow $30 or less of what they're allowed, then that's the best and fastest way to increase the score. And that's something you could explain. The utilization is really important because I can be allowed to have a credit card of $5,000. If I charge $3,500, I'm at 70%. And in the book, it says if you can be at 30% or less, ideally, on all credit that's allowed, that will combine to create the highest credit score in the fastest way possible. I think that's the best way I can say it. All right, so then that's credit. So you get the credit report, and here's how you file a dispute. And it's got letters in there, and the website's got letters. So how do I improve the credit report and score? I dispute the errors. I review it every year. I understand my score. I pay my bills on time. So these are all checklists in the toolkit for your clients. There's a big important thing here on keeping records, especially if people don't bank. A lot of people just put their financial records in envelopes and then mark them for the year and what it is and keep them. So there's a whole list on the kind of financial records that people should keep. Pay stubs, bank records, their debt, their monthly credit card statements, their receipts, etc. Okay? All right, that is that. Now we're going to quickly move to money services, cards, accounts, and loans. And what the CFPB does is they say the old days are gone when our grandparents could just go to the post office and get a money order. They went to the bank to get everything else. Those days are gone. So what we're trying to do is understand how money is handled in department stores, automobile dealers, superstores, convenience stores, grocery stores. You get prepaid debit cards and money orders and bill pays and money transfers. You can send money abroad in the grocery store. There's check cashers and payday lenders. There's bill payers and money orders. That's where you get all this stuff. Online companies. You can just take pictures of a check and send it in and never have to walk into a bank. You go to a mortgage company to get a loan for a home. A tax preparer are going to give these refund anticipation loans at a heavy cost, I might add. The consumer finance companies, the U.S. Postal Service. Money is handled all over the place. This doesn't even list how employers pay employees with employment benefit cards. You know, the slide hasn't even caught up to that. So the first tool is, what do you need? What do you want? What will empower you? I want a safe and secure place to keep my money. I want to be able to make purchases without having to carry cash. I want a low-cost and easy way to pay and manage my bills. I want to bank and pay bills on time. I want to have a paycheck deposited directly, etc. So this goes on. and the clients or staff will fill this out, and they'll figure out what they need and what they want first. And then the tool after that shows the pros and the cons and the ups and the downs. So when this says I want to be able to get a small loan quickly, well, I could get that at a credit card company. I'm going to pay. I could get it at a pawn shop. I'm going to pay. I could get it at a finance company, signature loan. I could get it at a payday loan provider. I'm going to pay, right? But I can get a small loan in all these places. What are the pros and cons? What are the costs? What are the benefits? What's the ease? What's the hard place? And again, the CFPB doesn't say avoid a check casher. They're mute on it. So there's a lot in here on, the other thing that I want to point out to you here is there's a thing on banks. A lot of really low-income families really feel uncomfortable in banks. They just don't fit in. Here's a whole analysis of where to go, and a lot of people have been locked out of the banks. So you want to get connected, if you don't already are connected, to the Bank On participants, and they have second chance accounts. So U.S. Treasury's got this huge Bank On initiative. Some of your cap agencies are involved, and some of you don't know about this. Bank On is a huge effort, and there's a big map on the CFED website, and you can get connected to the Bank On, participants in your area, credit unions, banks that have second chance accounts for people that have been in trouble before. There's a whole exercise in here that I love to do with groups, and you could do too. And I want you just to look at the top of these slides. It says checking account, prepaid debit card, money transfer, bill payment service, checking account, savings account, line of credit, car title loan, online banking, credit building loan, money order, okay? But it asks everybody to do the same thing, which is, how do you define it, where do you get it, and what are the benefits and the risks? And there's a tool in the toolbook that has all the answers. So what you do is you assign pairs or small groups of 3. Each of them will get something they've got to describe, and you could say this is going to be a teach back, and I want you to pretend that you've got to explain this to someone who's a new immigrant and has come here from Africa where it wasn't safe in their country to bank. Get down home, reel down home, and try to explain what these are, and let the whole group answer. Yep, that was great, that was fun. Get the funniest people up there, because this is really hard to explain what a prepaid debit card is, or what a checking account is, or money transfer. But they have to really simplify, and a lot of people will show pictures. But the idea here is to help educate people on what all this stuff is and what their options are. There's a tool in here for how you open an account. Can anybody open an account? Should everybody? And what's needed is you got to have money, you got to have some identification. You do not, you do not need to have a Social Security number, period. You can have an ITIN number for an interest-bearing account. So this is what you've got to have to open an account. This is the checklist of what you have to open an account. And it's really, people like it. It's just a nice little checklist. A lot of people don't understand overdraft coverage and what that is. And there's a nice little explanation on what it is, right? Money transfers, there's no rules now. So you have a lot of clients that send money to Mexico or Latin America or Iraq or Afghanistan or abroad to Israel or wherever, right? So now a remittance transfer, all the exchange rate information must be disclosed, the fees, the taxes, what they get on the other end, what they send on this end. In the olden days, you just sent money and you weren't quite sure what all those fees were or how much was going to be received on the other side. And if you have clients that are caught in any of this stuff, they really want to, don't use those places and report them. Just report them. Now, protecting your money, this is how you submit a complaint to the CFPB. And you go online, and in the upper right-hand corner, it says submit a complaint, and you can submit a complaint in 184 languages. So people who are experiencing financial abuse of any way, shape, or form, it needs to get reported. And when it gets reported, it might go into research or it might go into enforcement or action, but by law, there's a response within 15 days. And usually the creditor and the person filing it will come to some kind of agreement. We've seen lots of examples of private student loans being paid back, of consumer monies being returned. There's been all kinds of solutions. But you can see you can submit a complaint on all these topics: mortgages, payday loans, bank debt collectors, credit cards, student loans, private loans, vehicle loans, on and on it goes, okay? All right, so that's the whole thing for submitting a complaint. That's the complaint process. Protecting our identity is really, really important. These are all the identity identifiers that we've got. Moral is don't share this stuff with anybody, but there's 4 pages of how to protect your identity, and these are all the opt-out screens. So you go into all these opt-outs so that your name, your information, all your stuff is not sold or shared with anybody. And it's really important. Lots in here on red flags. There is no free lunch, so anything that's offered, so many online scams right now, if people don't recognize it, they shouldn't open it, you know, etc. Phishing, all that stuff. So there's a whole thing in here on red flags, all right? Consumer protection. In the toolkit, all the consumer laws are in one place. Laws on data collection, on loans that are signed, on fairness and not discrimination when it comes to lending in the community. On and on it goes. And what we often do is we do a teach back, so every small group will get assigned 1 or 2 laws. That's it. They learn that 1 or 2, and they have to teach it back in front of everybody else, but they have to give an example in their community of how it's being followed or of how it's not being followed. And then everybody's listening because they have to go up, next. And I've never seen this not work. So it's a way for people to learn the consumer protection laws, and it's a way for them to just be up to speed and be sharp as a saw so that when something goes awry, they can report it and be an advocate. Now, these are all the resources. You're going to get this deck from Hyacinth after today. These are all the resources. The complaint is at Consumer Complaint. All the resources on consumerfinance.gov. This is the consumer. I want you to look at the bottom down here. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling. You can go in there and do your zip code, and this is for really deep credit and debt counselors. If you don't already know this, there's an 800 number, and most communities have got a nonprofit that's already been certified in this area that's free, and you want to make that available to your clients. We've got a lot in here on how to plan a training, and I don't need to go over all this. I just want you to know that there's a manual we can give to you that will help you really identify the goals you want to achieve in your training and the topics that you want to cover here. So I don't want to go too fast, but this is all about Head Start families. And we're working with a lot of Head Start families around these tools in the home with their family service advocates, their in-home visitors, and so it helps you go through goals. And then there's a lot of examples. So I wanted to tell you, like we did Money and Me the very first time we were together, and an introduction to the CFPB, and then an orientation. There's a scavenger hunt, and then there's goal setting is 45 minutes. There's a whole bunch of examples in here about how much time everything takes, and just know that all of this time can be cut in half. All of it can. But it's got all the timing. So this is an example of a training, right? So the training manual will give you examples. Let me tell you what I use. In 1.5 hours, you can do CFPB, Money and Me, and you could do cash flow. That could be one whole training for an hour and a half. Another whole training is CFPB, Money and Me, and credit and debt using the exercises. Okay, another hour and a half could be CFPB, Money and Me, financial products, you'd think I could spell, products and services, and consumer protection. that can all be done. And don't forget, in the very beginning is the financial empowerment checklist for staff and the checklist for clients. So you kind of see where the money issues are. And that financial empowerment, it's actually a financial empowerment assessment, not checklist. Sorry about that, I can't think at the same time. It's an assessment. I really encourage it. It does take about 10 minutes to do, but to have everybody take it quietly and they can see where they can go to get help in the toolkit. So I want to just show you a couple other things here quickly. This is what the planning tool looks like. You can lay out all your topics, your timing, your tools, your process, your hours. People really like using this, or not, but it kind of gives you ideas of what topics and tools to use in the time frame you've got. Okay? Now, the next thing we have to go over quickly is that when you do a training, you have to do these surveys, and it's a drag, but you got to do them. And so Hyacinth is going to ask you for the number of trainings held and the number of people trained every month from now on, and we have to report it. In fact, we have weekly and daily numbers that we report from around the country. And that goes all the way up to Director Cordray and all the way into the Congress, et cetera. So you'll want to do the number of trainings, the number of people trained, and where they were trained, and how long they were trained. And that's going to go to Hyacinth. You're going to want to put the list of your organization, your CAP organization, in CAP, and then which version of the toolkit, which is the social services version. You're all training with the social services version. Services version, okay? You're not training with the legal aid version, you're not training with the volunteer version, you're not training with the union version, the worker version, social services. And then what was the effectiveness of the training, et cetera, and then the pre and post. So this is what the pre-training survey looks like, and you filled it out when you did this training. How confident are you? So on the top line, you put your CAP agency. And again, on the second line, you put your CAP agency. On the third line, you just put yes. And the fourth line, you put social services version. And then the questions are only 10 questions. How confident are you to understand core financial topics, to discuss these, to act, blah, 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 blah. And all the people who are in your room, even if it's 2 people, if they're honest, they're probably going to say not confident. But by the time you're done, they'll say confident. And this is the post-training survey. It's got the same questions, only they're going to do a few evaluation questions on your training, and then they're going to answer some financial wellness questions, which are new. Have you got enough emergencies set aside? Would you have enough money for a wedding or a funeral or something else you'd have to attend? I'm not worried about emergencies, stuff like that. There's some financial wellness questions. And then you, the trainer, will fill this out. And again, CAP agency, social services version. How many staff were in your training? 5. In what city did you train in? Bozeman, Montana. What was the start date of your training? July 19th. And how long was your training excluding breaks? 1 hour. That's it. And that goes in with all your surveys to Hyacinth. We asked everybody to fill in this sheet. This is a voluntary sign-in, not a required sign-in. The reason why is that this becomes part of a listserv for the CFPB to be able to relate directly to you and to people that you train. Let's say something new comes out on a prepaid debit card, they want to go direct to the consumer. If somebody does not want to be on a list with the CFPB that's never sold or shared, they shouldn't sign it. If they're willing to be on this list and they're willing to get direct contact from the CFPB, they should sign it. And then you'll send this in along with your surveys and your trainer surveys to Hyacinth, and then she'll get it to me, okay? This is how you order all this information now. So it's educational resources, your money, your goals, and there's a drop-down, and you put in the numbers you want, and you must use a street address and not a P.O. box, or you'll never get them. And it takes 45 weeks to get anything. So you want to make sure that it comes, and all the toolkits will come shrink-wrapped, 3-hole punched, and you need a 1.5-inch binder or a clip because they're big and they're free and they take, you know, don't order more than you need, but get enough for your staff, okay? Now, we've got 5 minutes left, a whopping 5 minutes. So can you guys tell me today, we've just done a big training now in the last 2 weeks. What is the most important thing you're taking away from this training today? And what is one more thing you'd like to learn about? What's one important thing you're taking away from this training today? So I want you to think about what we did. We did all the money that comes in, all the money and resources that go out. We did cash flow. We did debt. We did tracking debt, debt to income ratios. We did how to get rid of debt with the higher interest rate method and the lower interest rate method. We did credit. We focused on the credit score, how to pull the credit score, how to fix it. We got into all the banking issues. We got into consumer protection. So it looks like resources are new, how much debt is okay, the cash flow budget looks good. I learned more about establishing budgets and how to work with clients. It's strength-based. Yes, very much so. It's going to help me work with others on tracking monthly expenditures and income, a cash flow budget. All right, you guys are great. All right, good. I really, really appreciate your feedback. And this is the post-training survey. So this one will take you about 3 minutes to do. And I think I want to just ask, does anybody have any final questions? Does anybody have any final questions or comments? And I want you to let me know thumbs up or thumbs neutral or thumbs down in terms of how this training went for you. Belinda says thumbs up. Thumbs up. Ashley says thumbs up. Fanny says, Amy says thumbs up. Oh, Enrica got that. Thank you. Thumbs up, thumbs up. I would say neutral, okay? That's honest. Very much appreciate the podcast. Felt listened to and appreciated. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thumbs up. Okay, good. I think we hit target then. Thumbs neutral, Danielle says. That's honest. Okay. Thank you. Alma says, all righty. So you guys, we just wish you the very best. We really want you to train, even if it's a couple people. I missed last week's. How can I go back to it? The answer is, Christina, everything is audio recorded, and Hyacinth will have that for you. You'll get all these slides. Order the toolkits. You can listen to the training. It'll be there for you. You can go through it. It won't be hard, but I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. Jessica says thumbs neutral. Okay, so that's honest. All right. So I wish each of you the very best. Please, 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 I'll be in so much trouble if you don't go in and take this survey. And Hyacinth, do you have any last comments in the last 2 minutes that we've got of our training here today? And I think Hyacinth is on mute.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there.
Of course you did. Of course you did. So this would be a time that you could say anything to your colleagues, because we've just got about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to give everybody a chance to fill the survey out.
Denise, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to unmute myself on both ends, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for your time over these last few weeks to walk us through your money, your goals. Obviously, it's a very interactive, in-depth tool, and working both clients and staff through different aspects and strategies for their financial empowerment. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the partnership for your time.
Yeah, I want to thank each of you, too, for making the time to do this. And we're hopeful you can take all of this back to your clients and your colleagues. And we just want to keep spreading this free resource. And it should add to the quiver of what you've already got. It's not meant to replace it. But I think you're going to find that there's a lot in here that you won't find anywhere else. And so just really, really do that. I've used several versions. And when I was aware there's a social services version, all right? And,
okay.
Oh, you're using the Native Communities version at training later this week. Excellent, excellent. So look for the reentry one, too. Those of you that are working with people who are coming out of prison, look at that one, too. That'll be helpful to you, all right? So our very best to each of you, and I think we're gonna go ahead and sign off now. It's exactly, I have the top of the hour here. Our very best to each of you, and thanks so much for participating.
All right, thank you, Denise. And again, once again, as you all are signing off, I just want to reiterate that the recording link from today's meeting, but also last week's training, will be made available in a follow-up email. We'll start working on that right after today's event, and we'll get that out to you all hopefully within the next couple of days. But again, I want to reiterate what Denise said. Thank you all so much for taking the time to get invested. I know a lot of you are new to this, but thank you for taking the time to learn about your money, your goals, and we look forward to working with you all in these training efforts. So with that, we will close. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.